Welcome to the Successful Home Inspector Podcast, where we discuss everything you need to know about home inspection from A to Z. Brought to you by Preston Sandlin and Home Inspection Carolina. We're here to share some success stories and some not so successful stories. Some things we can all learn from, and maybe, just maybe, we can help each other and raise the profession. So sit back, turn up the volume, and enjoy. Now, here's your host of the Successful Home Inspector Podcast, Preston Sandlin.
Are you struggling to make your home inspection business grow? Well, have I got the answer for you. HomeInspectionFlyers.com. At HomeInspectionFlyers.com, you get 5 flyers a month. There are 3 sales flyers and 2 recipe flyers. And you can customize them to exactly what you want. And these are make great flyers when you go to the offices to put in their boxes, especially if you're doing like candy bowls or something along that nature. Like I said, it's 5 flyers a month for $29.99, and they're very creative, and you just put in your information. They come as a publisher file, and you just put in your information, and then you send them off to get printed. You can send them off online, and you can get color copies for less than 10 cents a copy. It's a great way to go. I went from being a 1-man home inspection firm to a 7-man home inspection firm on this one strategy alone. So try it today. HomeInspectionFlyers.com. Thanks.
Well, listeners, you guys are in for a great treat today. I have a really good friend of mine. He's one of the nicest home inspectors that I know, and he is a pretty sharp guy himself. He is out of Chicago. It is the home inspection man himself, Gary Monfeli. How you doing today, Gary?
I'm doing just fine.
Hey, well, so Gary, I did pronounce your last name right, didn't I?
Yes.
Monfeli or Monfeli. I'm the worst.
Just Monfeli.
Monfeli. Okay. Well, Gary, not many of us grew up wanting to be a home inspector. I didn't even know that was a profession when I was a kid. I wanted to be a pilot and an artist and a couple other things along the way. But so how did you become a home inspector, and how'd that come about? How'd you get into it, and what do you want to be when you were a kid?
Well, as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be an auto mechanic. I did it from as early as I could start working on cars. I did it, and I ended up actually doing that as a career for 35 years. I spent 30 years as a Volvo mechanic. And I actually started my business while I was still at Volvo working. And a friend of mine had mentioned, after I told him I went to look at a house for somebody that was buying a house, to tell him what was wrong with it, the friend of mine told me that, that there's a business where people actually do that. That's what they do for a living. And I had no idea that there was such a business. I knew a house I was selling had gotten looked at by somebody, but I thought it was just somebody like me who just went over there to help them out. I didn't realize it was an actual business. And so I started looking at it on the internet, and this was late 90s, 97, 98, that area, and found out that there was actually such a thing as a home inspection business. And the guy that suggested it, him and I actually took a class together for home inspections, because in Illinois it wasn't licensed yet to be a home inspector. So him and I took a class together, and we did some home inspections together, and then he ended up retiring and moving down to Marco Island. And
nice.
You may have met him, Randy Shannon. I brought him to a couple of Ken Compton's pre-conference get-togethers at their house in Naples, and he came with me because he lived right down there.
I think I did meet him.
I'm pretty sure you did. And so that's how I went from being a Volvo mechanic to a home inspector.
Well, I tell you, Gary, there's probably a lot of parallels for being a mechanic, because a lot of that is detective work.
Right, and it's there's hydraulics involved, there's electronics involved, there's plumbing involved, heating and air conditioning. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between them. And I had, helped my father, who built houses for 20 years. So that's how I got the knowledge having to do with the house, and it just worked out for me,
Yeah, so the same thing with me, Gary. I'm actually a pretty decent mechanic. Not because I chose. I tell you what happened. I just drove so many pieces of junk growing up that I learned because I couldn't afford a new car, and in that span of time, just about everything that could go wrong with a car happened, and I learned how to fix it.
Yeah, well, you had to, sure.
Yeah, and, it did help in home inspection because it is a bit of a detective work. You hear a funny sound or something's not going right. And,
right.
It's kind of a process of elimination. It could be either this or this or this, and we'll check that. If it's not that, move on to the next thing. Another good thing, you probably, sounds like you were like me. You grew up helping your dad. My dad worked on cars, and, I was his wrench hander person. I told my wife, that's how I learned fractions. I'm not particularly smart, but I was good at fractions because I knew the wrenches, and
it's funny. With me, it was just the opposite. My father knew nothing about cars, but he always wanted to be there to help me while I was working on them. So
really?
he'd be handing me the tools.
I hear you. Well, you know what's funny though? Apparently, my wife. I love my wife. She is very smart in things I'm not smart in. But apparently, she didn't do any mechanical stuff because one day I was like, "Hey, honey, could you go get me a Phillips head screwdriver?" And she said, "Is that the one that's like the plus sign or the minus sign?"
There you go. Sounds like a pretty good description to me.
I know. Well, it actually probably does make more sense. I hear you. Well, Gary, you mentioned that you were starting back like 97, 98. So if I'm doing math, let's see, 10. So how many years total? I guess you're looking around 15 years you've been in the business?
A little more than that. Yeah, and I know you always, ask how someone hired their first inspector to work for them. I actually had five inspectors working for me while I was still working at Volvo.
Really? Wow.
And I built the business strictly on Google AdWords, and I think I'm still paying off that credit card debt from that.
Wow.
But I mean, Google actually called me when I stopped using AdWords. They were in shock because all of a sudden their income dropped,
Yeah.
So that was how I first started having other inspectors. And then when the market kind of, as soon as I retired from Volvo, of course, that's when the market crashed. And I ended up losing all those guys because I couldn't keep them busy.
Right.
And I slowly worked it back up to I've got 3 guys plus me, and I'm training a new guy, and hopefully I'll get one more new guy besides that going.
Oh, sounds good. So tell me, in the 15 years or so that you've been in it, Gary, what changes have you seen in the business?
Well, the biggest change is the cameras and the different softwares and things. I'm actually using the same software I used since 2000 myself, but I'm working with Dominic to get Home Inspector Pro software up and running in my company. I just haven't done it yet.
Okay.
And, of course, drones. We all have our drones.
Do you have one? Do you have one?
Yeah. So far, I flew it once and it attacked me. So I've got somebody else working on learning how to operate it and work the cameras and stuff for me. And I'll start out bringing him with me on inspections, and then he can teach the other guys how to use theirs because I bought them all drones.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll tell you a little tip somebody gave me, Gary, is I went out and bought before I started flying. What'd you get? Did you get the Phantom? Is that the one you got?
No, I got the cheaper one until we all learn how to do it.
All the pair? Yeah, I started saying get the hub sand and play with that first. And once you master that, then get the other ones, that have the GPS and stuff. But those little hub sand ones, they're like $50. So if you crash it, you don't feel so bad. But that other one's like $1,300. If you crash
Right. I got them from the Verizon store. They're Patriots or Parrots or something. I don't know.
Parrot.
But they're about $120 a piece or something. They weren't quite the cheapest, but they certainly weren't the $1,300 ones. I don't know that I'll ever go to those.
Well, we'll have to get together and fly them sometime.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, you had 5 guys when you were working at Volvo, and then the economy tanked, and then you hired back. There's a lot of guys out there who struggle with, their one-man show, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's times I've think I should go back to that. But tell me, you know, a lot of guys struggle. What was it like hiring that first one?
Well, I never had the thought of being anything more than a one-man shop myself, you know, until I got really busy, and I couldn't schedule every one of them for 5 o'clock, so I had to start hiring guys. And the first one, I think, is the hardest, because all of a sudden you're going from making 100% profit on an inspection to whatever the split is. So now you're not making 100% of the profit, and I think it takes 3 or maybe 4 before it's, you know, shows substantially that it's an improvement in your profits and stuff. So it is pretty shaky at first. And I actually met the guy that's been with me the longest through Ken Compton, because he had signed up for Ken's stuff, and Ken gave him my number and said, you know, Gary works in your area. Why don't you give him a call and see if you can work with him? And he's been with me over 10 years now. So
cool.
That worked out really good. And my second one that I have now was one of my first students when I taught at the Ashe School. So I let him get about 2 years' worth of experience, and then I kind of scooped him up.
Right.
And a third one was just a guy that had been doing inspections for other people. He's not in business for himself or anything, and he's worked out great. He's actually training my newest guy. So that's working out really well.
Yeah, you know, and you mentioned it. You know, your profit does go down when you hire that first one. And, you know, I learned this lesson way back. I was the kid when I lived with my dad. I went around the neighborhood with my gas can and this was old school. You know, I would mow lawns. There were a lot of elderly people in our neighborhood, and I mowed lawns for $5 or $6. Well, pretty soon I got some other kids to help me, and I got more lawnmowers and more lawnmowers. Pretty soon I had like 7 or 8 kids and all this, and I was making a whole lot more gross, but I'm not sure my net was as good as it was when it was just me. But the other thing was the control issue. You know, nobody's going to do it as good as you, and the headaches and the people complaining, you know, they didn't trim it as well as they should have. You know, it wasn't as good as you do. And, you know, I saw it on a small scale back then, and then I saw it on a bigger scale now. But, you know, there's workarounds, but I certainly respect people who want to stay a one-man shop. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And again, there are days that I think that's not a bad way to go. Well,
yeah, and I've had people work for me before also, because I had a snow plowing business for 20 years. So I had up to 15 guys working for me when I was doing snow plowing. So I'm kind of used to having people work for me. You know, I was in the National Guard 32 years, and I always had people under me working for me in the Guard. So, and half of those worked for me in the snow plowing business.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
so I helped get into the business.
I hear you. It sounds like you learned managerial skills on the job.
Yeah,
well,
a couple different jobs.
Yeah. Well, Gary, tell me, and I know it depends on the inspector, but how do you train your guys? Is it kind of like a on-the-job training thing, or do you sort of have a program? Or how does that look?
Well, you know, all the other guys that I did hire had at least 2 years' experience.
Sure.
So they don't have too many bad habits already. You know, they're easy enough to kind of manipulate to do things the way I would like them done, you know.
Right.
And this one guy that is getting trained right now is the first one that just got his license. When I took him on an inspection, it was his first inspection besides the 5 that the school is required to give them in Illinois.
Right.
So it's slower coming along than I had hoped, you know, which that's why I kind of scooted him over to the other inspector. I'm hoping he's more patient than me. And so far that's going okay. So
cool.
But I kind of like already having them trained, you know, already having them been through a couple of years worth of at least doing inspections. But this will come along all right. It'll be fine.
Yeah. You know, I've hired both ways. I used to think that, you know, do you have a stereotypical or, you know, like a type of inspector you want to hire? But I've seen good and bad come from all age groups. I've seen good and bad come from experience and no experience. Certainly no experience, I call it like building through the draft or free agents.
Right.
A free agent would be somebody who's already had experience. And sometimes you have great luck with them. They come right on and, they might have to learn the software, but they know how to inspect. But then sometimes you get a guy like that and he's got bad habits and you just can't break them. You can't,
Right.
And so it's, I don't know. It depends on the guy. And then, building through the draft, so to speak, like bringing a guy up, it's a project because you got to work, you got to train them a long time. It's going to cost some money and take some time. But sometimes if, they're moldable and they'll listen, they're going to turn out to be great. And sometimes I've got them a long way and just realized they won't. So there is no, everyone's different.
Right.
That's
that's okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just got to work around it.
That's right. Now, you mentioned it, I guess, do you have a licensing in Illinois?
Yes. Yeah, you have to be licensed.
What's required to get licensed in Illinois?
Well, you have to take a minimum hour type class, which is what I taught for the Ashe School. It was a 2-week class, 2 5-day-week class. And
okay.
You have to have a minimum of 5 inspections on properties, which years ago they didn't even have that as one of the requirements. So, that was kind of one of my advertising points was that you could become a home inspector in Illinois without ever even being in a house,
Right,
so
right.
Now they've changed that. Now at least you have to go to 5 inspections before you can be an inspector. So after you pass the class, then you have to pass the state test. And
cool.
It was based on the ASHI standards and stuff. So, it's pretty much what we teach. So it worked out well.
Cool.
Us.
Now, ASHI is in Illinois, correct? Are they close to Chicago?
The headquarters. Yeah. They're just the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and that's where the class is held and stuff. And originally, when I was hired by Mike Casey and Kevin O'Malley, it was before Casey O'Malley School actually merged with ASHI. So that's who I originally worked for, and then ASHI merged with them and eventually bought them out to where now it's strictly the ASHI School.
Oh, okay. I heard something, Gary, and I'm not 100%, but I'm like 98% on this at a conference that I just went to, that if you're a former veteran, I mean, not a former veteran. If you're a veteran, you're a veteran. I didn't do that right. But that you get a scholarship with ASHI, or that, there's a process.
Yes.
But do you know, that would be a great thing to recruit guys that are veterans, and it would be a win-win because you're helping
Definitely.
out folks that helped us. And
I was really glad to hear Frank tell us that at the conference, because it's something we've been working on for quite some time, and nobody deserves it better than them,
Right. No, it's awesome. That's a win-win. I'm aggressively seeking veterans. I've got a couple working for me now, but they've already.
I just sent a veteran the information to get signed up for the school myself just yesterday.
Oh, cool, awesome. In fact, one of my best inspectors is he's a Air National Guard. Switching gears just a little bit here, Gary, do you have a success quote you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, along the lines of talking about bringing on new inspectors, I want to quote a famous person by the name of Preston Sandlin, who told me last month that the most important thing is that everybody in the company gets along with each other. And that's definitely true. I mean, you can't have any kind of problems between the inspectors or, anybody in the office or anything like that. Everybody's got to get along.
Yeah.
And that's very important when hiring people. Another quote I would say is, I don't know if you've heard of Og Mandino.
I have.
But I had met him once and spent about an hour and a half talking to him, and he was just a great person. And one of his quotes that I really like a lot is, always render more and better service than is expected of you, no matter what your task may be. And that's kind of how we've built our business, is constantly giving more than they expect of us.
That's excellent. I love that. I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down. You know, on that quote you said of me, have you ever worked somewhere where like everybody gossiped and there was like a cancer? You know, it's just like you didn't even want to be around there. And so that's what I always tell my guys. I'm like, listen, this is not Russia. You're not always going to love me, and I'm sure you're going to have complaints, and you're going to have complaints about. Just come right to me and tell me, but don't. You know, I don't want any gossip. I know Dave Ramsey has like a zero gossip policy. But, you know, we don't want a cancer. And, you know, I hate to say it, there's only one way to get rid of cancer, and that's you got to cut it out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if I have had that in my business, and I had to cut it out. And, you know, I didn't want to. I mean, well, I did want to, but, you know, it's hard to fire somebody. But, no, that's good stuff, good stuff. Well, Gary, I'm going to combine these two questions like we talked about in the pre-inspection. Tell us something that people don't know about you, and what do you do in your spare time?
Okay. Well, I actually have a couple different things that people don't know about me, and they're all related to music.
Oh, okay.
I played in bands for years and stuff, but the first thing is that back in '63, before all you folks were born, I had the good fortune of meeting the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
And that was pretty cool. They were, just before they were heading to Comiskey Park to go play there, they were staying at a hotel that I hitchhiked to, and there was 4 limos out in front of this hotel and 10 million people at the front, so I knew they weren't going to go to these limos because they'd get killed. So me and a couple of my buddies hung around the back door, and sure enough, we saw a Ford wagon pull up to one of the back doors, and we ran over there, and out the 4 of them came, and they shook all of our hands and said they hoped to see us tonight at the concert, and they got in their car and rode away, and people sat out front of that hotel for hours afterward.
How awesome was that?
Not realizing that they had missed it. So that's one thing that people don't know about me.
That's cool. So cool.
Second, that also happens to do with music, is that I grew up on the next block from Frankie Sullivan from Survivor.
Oh, wow.
And he used to come hear my bands play, and all of us used to teach him this and that, few things about playing the guitar, and the next thing we knew, he was playing 100 times better than any of us.
Oh, wow.
And I actually had the fortune of doing an inspection for him on his new house in the Chicago area, and I reminded him of that, and he had no recollection of ever coming over there and seeing my band play. So I wasn't surprised, you know. But I still have the memory. That's all that counts, you know.
That's cool, cool.
And then the other thing, I was at the first, at Gary Sinise's first practice for his Lieutenant Dan band. I don't know if you ever heard of his band.
I have, yeah.
He, supports the troops a lot, and he's made many trips to Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff. And I was at their very first practice. It was a beer and pizza party in the city at the Veterans Memorial Art Museum, and that was pretty nice. I really enjoyed meeting them, and actually got together with them 2 or 3 other times after that. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Three things that nobody knew about me.
Well, cool, Gary. I got 2 questions. What was the name? Well, first of all, what do you play? What did you play? And what was the name of your band?
Oh gosh, I had a million different names. I played lead bass guitar for a while and lead guitar for a while.
Okay.
In high school, one of the bands, we were the Mad Hatters. I have no idea where that name came from. When I played lead guitar, I was in the Chicago River Blues Band.
Wow.
I really can't remember too many of the other names. One of the things that I know you bring up a lot of times is what things have you failed at? One of the things I failed at was hang gliding. And when I crashed, that ended my guitar career because I broke everything on my left side. So that pretty much put a stop to my guitar playing career.
Wow. So that's not a good thing to fail at.
No, you don't usually get more than one chance. But
wow, where were you hang gliding when that happened? Where was it?
This time, I'd gone all over the place, but this time it was Warren Dunes, Michigan. I just happened to catch a crosswind that caught me off guard, and you wear a helmet when you're flying. It was the first time my parents were there watching me fly, and they saw this helmet rolling down a hill, and they thought my head was still in it. I think
my gosh,
I almost killed them, you know.
Oh, wow. Did it slam you up against a rock or like a...
No, it was just rolling down the dunes. It was just, just went into a dive and never came out of it.
Oh, sorry about that. Well,
so was I.
Yeah, but you're a great home inspector. Well, Gary, changing back into the home inspection mode here for a second, you know as well as I do that if you do enough home inspections, you're going to have an unhappy camper. How do you handle an unhappy camper? Do you have a process, and what's that look like?
Well, when they, say someone gets a hold of me because they think something got missed,
Right.
Usually the person that did the inspection, I have that inspector call them and talk over what it is that the issue is. If they can't resolve it with just a phone call, because sometimes the person just wants to be heard, he just wants to vent a little or something.
Sure.
Then I'll talk to them and just on the phone. And if that doesn't resolve things, then both the inspector and I will go to the house and figure out right then what's going to happen. If the person's going to end up getting a refund or something like that. Luckily it's never gotten much farther than that. Good.
I know it's not fun, but it is part of our business. Mm-hmm. Well, Gary, we're going to get into some I made it moments or some come a long way moments and some failure moments. But first, let's take a pause for our sponsor.
Well, I'll admit this probably doesn't have much to do with home inspection, but it will help me pay for this podcast. If you're in need of anything to hang on the wall along the lines of art, go to PrestonSandlin.com. Check it out. You can click on there if you're interested, and it takes you to Fine Art America, some of the stuff I've done. And you can have all kinds of things, phone case covers, all different size art things. So if you're looking for a gift or something like that, you like this podcast, it'll help me pay for this podcast. That would be awesome. And if you can prove to me that you bought something from it and I see you at a conference or something, I'll buy you an adult beverage. Thanks a lot.
Well, we are back here with Gary Monfeli, and he has been dropping value bombs all over the place. I hope everybody's writing some stuff down, and I learned some stuff, too. I didn't know about Gary. That's pretty interesting. Well, Gary, besides the hang gliding accident, tell us a time when you failed. Take us there, and what'd you learn from it?
Honestly, that was the only thing I could think of was when I crashed hang gliding, and what I learned from it was to not go hang gliding anymore.
I hear you.
I've been pretty lucky, I guess. I really haven't had too many failures.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We went to the Outer Banks. I took the girls to the Outer Banks, my daughters, and they do hang gliding out there on Jockey's Ridge. And man, I wanted to do it, but the other thing was it was kind of expensive. So between being a little bit scared and it being pretty expensive, we declined. We did go to this crazy water slide thing instead that went straight down. And, your kids aren't afraid of anything, and you don't want to get afraid in front of them. And it's funny. It's I went up there to the top, and we're getting ready to go down this thing, and I asked the lifeguard, the girl, little high school girl up there, I was like, anybody ever died on this thing? She said, not this year. Not this year.
Oh, that's
yeah. You know that Marine Corps saying, what is it? Fear is wetting your pants. Or peeing your pants, and courage is doing what you need to do with wet britches. So it's a good thing my bathing suit was already wet.
There you go.
Well, Gary, on the other end of the spectrum, do you have I had been calling an I made it moment, but I don't like that because I never feel like we totally make it. But how about I came a long way moment? Have you had one of those?
Yeah, I think I felt pretty good about myself when Kevin O'Malley and Mike Casey chose me to be their lead instructor for their Chicago location of their Casey O'Malley Inspector School. I kind of felt pretty proud of myself for that, and eventually, like I said, that evolved into the Ashe School, and after Ashe took over the school, I taught for 5 years, and that made me feel pretty good about myself,
That's cool. That's very cool. Gary, you need to write a book. You need to write. Yeah, you could write a home inspection book. Well, speaking of that, do you have a favorite book that you could recommend for our listeners? And what is it about the book that you like?
Well, on a personal basis, I would say As a Man Thinketh by James Allen has always been one of my favorite books. I've given out hundreds of copies of it, as a matter of fact, because I think it's so important how a person thinks, what their mind is and stuff.
Sure.
As far as business wise, of course, Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited is like a Bible for anybody that wants to be in business or wants to get out of business eventually. And then another one that was really impressed me was Harry Beckwith's Selling the Invisible.
Oh, okay.
Which is about selling services, and right now I'm reading The One Thing by Gary Keller. That's been really good. I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah, I like that book a lot too. Well, this next question I combined it with another one, Gary, because it's basically the same thing. It's about ancillary services. Let's say I'm a buyer or real estate agent in your market. There are other home inspectors in your market. Why should I hire you? Is there something you do that others don't?
Well, I'm sure they all consider themselves detailed, but the feedback that I get from past buyers is how detailed we are, how we explain things down to very, very minute details about how to take care of the house when we see things, and one of the things we say when we wrap up doing the home inspection, of course, is that once they see the email report and have time to sit down and read it with the pictures and everything, they have any questions, they can call us. And the last thing I always say is walking out the door is, as long as you own this house, if you have any questions, you can call us. And that's
cool.
Make them pretty happy,
Cool. Now, Gary, we talked about some of the changes you've seen in home inspection, and I know we don't know for sure, but if you had a crystal ball, how would you think, if you could predict it, what would you suspect that the home inspections will change in the future?
The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is that possibly they'll get software that reacts better to us just speaking while we're going through the inspection. Dragon Talk is out there, and some people have had luck with it, some haven't. I haven't tried it personally, but I think it would be great if we could just, talk into a microphone and have the report be working on itself while we're walking through the house explaining things.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I tried that Dragon Speak, Naturally Speaking. I liked it, but a lot of times I write my reports in like Starbucks or coffee shop or something.
Right.
And I just felt really odd standing there by myself, with this headphone, talking out loud, and people are looking at me. So it's like, I just type it. Well, well, Gary, I'm going to combine these two because they're kind of the same question. When this phone call comes in, your buyer calls in and says, my contractor said you should have, so you know the question. Have you been thrown under the bus by a contractor? How do you handle it? Do you have any idea of how we can prevent or control this?
Well, to answer the last question, I have no idea how you're going to prevent it or control it, because I'm sure they're telling the buyer, we're going to get a really good new furnace for you since your home inspector is going to get stuck paying for it,
Right.
The only time I actually heard it worded that way was an inspection that I don't even know who did it, me or one of my guys, but it was 18 months after the inspection.
Wow.
Which means this house made it through 2 winters.
Right. You're going to say it's been through the seasons. Yeah.
A furnace gave out, and this buyer's HVAC person told them that your home inspector should have told you that furnace wasn't going to last 2 winters.
Oh, my God.
And I really said to the guy, are you kidding? He really said that? And he goes, yeah, that's what he said, I said, well, for one thing, he probably doesn't even know what we check on a home inspection as far as the furnace goes. And I said, do you have that in writing? And he said, yeah, I do. I got that in writing. I says, well, do me a favor, scan that and send me a copy of it, or let me know when I can come by and pick up a copy of that, because I'd really like to talk to your HVAC guy about it. And I never heard from the guy again. So
that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's like, we've all been in accidents, car accidents or something. That's like saying, well, you should have known 2 years ago you were going to get in this car accident today. I mean,
right.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Well, on another note, kind of related, I don't know if you guys have this in Chicago. We got it down here pretty bad. It seems like mold has now become a profit center for a lot of pest control companies and stuff, to the point of I feel like they're using fear to sell this stuff. And basically, I'll just come out and say it. Some of these guys, if they get a call that somebody suspects mold, they're mold salesmen. They're not mold. Some of them don't even test. And I just have a problem ethically with it, number one. And number two, it affects us because they go into a house that we've inspected and scared. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's some people out there listening to this that are, I'll probably get a nasty email. Yes, there is toxic mold. I get it. I know there is. But there's also some mold remediation crooks out there. And
right.
I don't know. I don't know really what I'm asking here, but do you have those in Chicago? Do you have any opinion?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely with the moisture and stuff that we have between, in between the snowfall. It's raining right now, as a matter of fact. I mean,
right.
I feel like we're living up in Washington or something. It seems like it's always either raining or something.
Right.
And, houses get moisture in them. And, I think it's something should be fixed, but I don't make a big deal out of it to scare the heck out of them. If people want something tested, I'll test it and give them the results. And, I pretty much turn it over to, ServPro or one of the mold remediation companies. And if they want to make a big deal out of it, it's up to them,
Right.
I tell them every house has mold, especially in our area in Chicago,
Sure. Well, there's mold everywhere. I mean, that's what
right.
cheese is made out of.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, let me ask your opinion on something. There's some home inspector forums out there, and there are some great people on those forums that are willing to help people. However, there's some people who are some chest beaters and like to impress us with what they know, and sometimes the language, I don't know, sometimes I think it gets a little unprofessional, and I think it's, some people don't go to the forum because of that. Do you have any ideas on that, or how we could keep it professional?
Yeah, I don't know that you're going to ever stop the chest beaters, because those are a good proportion of the home inspectors. But I go on Gary Smith's forum. I go on a multi-inspector forum, but I don't comment very much, just because I don't need to hear about somebody else's opinion if it's 180 degrees from mine,
Sure.
I like to learn from them, so I mostly read, but I don't post very much at all.
Yeah.
I don't need any arguments, I don't know I'm right all the time or anything, but I just assume, was it Abraham Lincoln said, if you keep your mouth shut, people can only think you're stupid.
Right.
They won't know for sure.
Right. Well, and my wife is a lot smarter than me. It's taken me a while to figure that out, and she's told me, and you don't have to go to every argument you're invited to.
That's good. That's a good point.
And the other thing I found out, it's kind of like, a lot of times you don't have to say something; people see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just let when you read something, you form an opinion right away of who's being a jerk or who's not, and if somebody's doing that to you, then you don't let people will see it. So anyway, well, now Gary, keep in mind this is a G-rated show with this question in mind. What's the wildest, craziest, or weirdest thing you've ever found on a home inspection?
I really haven't found that much. I mean, one time there were two 100-year-old Underwood typewriters in an attic once that the new buyers said they hope the sellers don't take it with them when they go. I have no idea if they did or not. But and then once I found a brand new shotgun up in an attic, and the buyer, the wife, said, "Oh, you need to take that out of there. I don't want that in this house." And I said, the house is bank owned. It's their property. I can't. You can't give that to me. It's not yours yet. I said, if the house closes and it's still there and you want to get rid of it, call me. I'll come get it. But I probably found a lot more crazy things as a mechanic than in trunks of cars and glove boxes than I did as a home inspector.
Oh, wow.
Because it's G-rated, we're not going to go into what I find.
I was going to say, do you ever find any bodies or anything?
No. Not real bodies.
I started to say, you are from the town of Al Capone. So.
Yeah, no, never run into that.
Oh, okay. Gary, do you have a training or a resource or internet or marketing resource or an app or something that you use you'd be willing to share with everybody?
I'm not techie enough for very many apps. I mean, I'm really happy that I just had a logo made strictly for my app that goes on the phone to take you to ISN's booking a job online, on your phone. And that's within a week after putting that word out on that. I've already got realtors using that to book inspections, so I kind of like that. Marketing-wise, I'm working on getting certified in Illinois to teach realtors CE classes.
Cool.
I really think that's going to be a good way to meet realtors. I know what got me into offices years ago was teaching Facebook and teaching how to, realtors how to set up their Facebook page. And then a year after that or so, I got into offices by teaching LinkedIn to them and just things like that. And I haven't given a class on apps yet. I know a couple other guys have. I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. But I really think the CEs are going to be a big thing. I think it's going to help me get in deeper into offices that I'm already in,
No, I think you're right.
I've got Ken Compton's helping me with some classes to teach a CE, and John and Joan Watkins have got some classes that they're sharing with me to see if I can get those through Illinois' very rigid laws about CEs, and William and Sherry Troutman's helped me with some, so no sense reinventing the wheel. These guys have got some great classes, so I'm just going to tweak them a little bit and personalize them, and that's about it.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And for the listeners out there, what Gary's talking about is the real estate CE.
Right.
So he's providing value for the agent, probably at cost, whatever the cost. You probably have to pay the state something, but a lot cheaper than they would pay somewhere else. And so he's figuring out a way to give value to the agents, something they need, and being in front of them 4 hours or 3 hours, however long it is. So that's excellent. Good stuff. Well, Gary, what's the best part of your job and why, and what's the worst part of your job and why?
Well, I think the best part is helping the home buyers. I mean, most of them, for the most part, just really appreciate all the details that we give them and the tips that we point out to them. I mean, a lot of them are first-time home buyers, and they really appreciate being told how to take care of different things, and whether it has to do with the foundation or the furnace or whatever, helping them become. I always word things in a way that home ownership is great. You're going to really enjoy this, especially when they're first-time home buyers. And, I just really enjoy that. But on the other end of the spectrum, the ones that aren't happy because of the different things that aren't part of the standards, they can be kind of a pain.
Oh yeah.
They want to know why certain things aren't checked, and I always give them a copy of the standards and explain that this isn't an exhaustive inspection. It would take 5 hours to go through things as deep as they would like it.
Or how come you didn't cut into that wall like that guy on the TV show?
Yeah, all of our buddies. We all love him.
Yeah, I try not to mention his name because I'm sure the lawsuit papers would be coming soon. But let's see. We just got, I think, just a couple more questions here, Gary. And you've been very generous here on a Sunday afternoon, and you've given a lot of gold nuggets. If you had to move to a new town about equal the size of Chicago, although there's not many towns equal to the size of Chicago, there might be one or two, and you had all the knowledge and equipment that you currently have, room and board taken care of, but you don't know anybody. you have $5,000, and you have all your licenses and all that. So what are you doing with that $5,000 in the first week?
Well, I think one of the first things, if I knew I was going to be there a couple of weeks ahead of time or whatever, I would buy the appropriate URLs for websites that would get the most attention in those areas.
Okay.
And then, of course, I'd have, either Dominic Marisick or Ken Compton, either one of them prepare a website for me that's going to get shot up as fast as it can to the top of the Google sites.
Right.
And then, I guess I would just use your flyers, and that's all I would do. What else do you need, right?
Here's $5, Gary. Thank you for the plug.
Then the other thing, I would hit the ground running to the real estate offices and find out what charities they're all involved in. I try to get involved in as many of the charities as I can. I just, not that it's a charity, but I, had a powwow with Gordon Fox last month, and he talked about how he leverages the Keller Williams Bold training, which was a totally different way than I had tried to do it, which wasn't that successful the way I did it, and they appreciated it, but it didn't get me very far,
Right.
And, so I would get involved in their charities as much as I can. I've always done the Keller Williams Red Day. I've always sponsored their lunch ever since they opened the office for their Red Day, which is their charity day. And
sure.
I know they appreciate it,
No, it's good stuff. And, Gordon Fox is like the E.F. Hutton of home inspection.
Right.
he
talks, we listen.
Everybody listens. Exactly.
Yep, definitely.
Well, Gary, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Yeah, well, maybe how long am I going to be in this business, which
all right.
The answer is I hope not that much longer. I'm getting kind of long on the tooth, so I'm kind of trying to set the business up to eventually either sell it or move it on to one of the guys that works for me or something like that. I don't know, but that's something Ken Compton and Kevin O'Malley are helping me with, trying to set it up to sell.
Yeah, if you haven't met Gary is in good shape. He's young at heart. I don't know how old you are. What are you?
I just
40?
want to. Yeah, thank you. You get the $5 right back now.
Yeah, there you go.
I need time. Last year or 2013 we did 800 inspections, and then 2014 I did about the same, but I managed to do 100 less of them myself, which is a good goal, and because we spent time doing quite a few vacations last year, and I kind of like that, so I'm trying to get back into being able to do 4 or 5 vacations a year. So
sure,
I can't do it with this work,
Well, and you know what? We all should be. I mean, I've always heard you should always run your business like you were going to sell it, because otherwise, I mean, you need your accounting, you need systems in place, because it's and I talked about there's nothing wrong with being a one-man shop. There absolutely is nothing wrong with it, but there's really not much to sell there. If you go to sell that, you can't sell yourself. I mean, you're the business. I mean, the phone number and the website has some value, but not. It's not a business. It's a job.
Right.
And you can't sell a job. You can sell a business, but you can't sell a job. But anyway, last question. Is there anything, Gary, you'd like to ask me?
Where do you get your crazy ideas for your flyers?
I don't take my medication.
Oh, that's what does it.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. Now I get a lot of other ideas I don't want, but yeah, for 1 or 2 days a month I don't take my medication, and my imagination runs wild. Well,
Sounds
Gary,
good.
I know you've got a lot to do today, and I appreciate you taking the time. I'm hoping that do you have a Facebook where everybody listening to this that got by, they can come give you a like?
Yeah, there's one under my name, Gary Monfeli, and then there's the Home Inspection Man Chicago is the business page, and I would definitely like more likes on that.
Yeah, and is there a way, would it be okay if somebody wanted to get in touch with you to find out more information? How could they do that?
Well, email is gary@homeinspectionman.com, which that's not the best way because I get 300 or 400 emails a day. But
oh, wow.
My cell phone is 815-690-6903. So if somebody wants something, they can call me or text me, or somebody wants to send me their CE classes so I can use them. That'd be great. You know.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. Send that to Preston as well. Forward it to me. All right. Well, Gary, thank you so much for your time. You've been more than gracious.
Including me in this elite group of inspectors that you're interviewing.
Oh, you were definitely on the list. You were on the list. All right, Gary. Well, enjoy your Sunday, and I know you've got some stuff to do, and just thanks for talking to us today.
All right. Yeah, same to you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Take care. Take it easy, Gary. Bye.
Thanks for checking out the Successful Home Inspector podcast. You can find show links at thesuccessfulhomeinspector.com. Check out the website for special offers, information, and other resources. Thanks again for listening to the Successful Home Inspector podcast. And remember to check back for new episodes. The Successful Home Inspector podcast is brought to you by Preston Sandlin and Home Inspection Carolina.